the Bharat users becomes very, very intriguing and challenging to build for.
कोस पे बदले पानी, चार कोस पे वानी.
We were forced to shape our behavior on how the products were defined. You cannot send notifications if the internet is off.
Is the difference significant enough to build digital products differently for them? Welcome to another exciting episode of Build for Bharat, a podcast series where we decode what it takes to build for India beyond the metros. If product building would be a sport, then our guest for today would have been running for the Olympics. I'm very excited to invite Amar Shivas on the show today. Amar currently heads product and business functions at Scaler as the SVP. Previously, Amar worked as the VP of product management at Doubtnut, an edtech platform solving for learning outcomes for rural India. I had the privilege of closely working with Amar while we were building a community called Products for Next Half Billion. In fact, this podcast stemmed out of the conversations that we had around the behaviors of new internet users. Obsessed with his craft and full of workaholic energy, Amar has been one of those few product leaders who have been able to master the art of scaling products while being grounded in hyperlocal user insights. I can go on, but thank you so much, Amar, for joining us today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dipanshu, for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be on your initiative, Build for Bharat. Kudos to the energy that you have shown to uncover insights related to how interesting and difficult it is to build for Bharat, and I'm sure that this podcast will uncover a lot of learnings for all of us in the product space.
Thank you so much, Amar, for your kind words, and thank you so much for being supportive throughout the journey. This episode particularly is a critical one because what I saw from the feedback of previous episodes is that people have different perceptions around what is this Bharat user segment. Some people think they live in totally remote rural areas or they are just farmers. When we say Bharat users or next half billion users, what do we actually mean?
As far as I know, the term Bharat users or next half billion was coined in 2017 when people realized that in India and globally, there was this new wave of internet users who had started to come and use the products that had existed since a long while, right? In India, particularly, Jio brought that revolution where a lot of people who could not even imagine having access to high quality internet on their mobile devices, I think they started to get that access. And earlier, obviously, some places the access was there, but it was very, very costly. But I think Jio revolutionized and in a way, I believe, democratized internet access for population at scale in India. And that is when these people, for the first time, or living online, started to sort of become accessible, is when they started to explore all the products out there and they started looking for solutions for their problems that they were facing on a daily, weekly, or monthly level online, right? That is when all the big techs out there, Google was one of the first to identify that this is happening because a lot of internet as of today is in English, right? So that means that it is not designed for people who are coming online who might not be primarily native English speakers. So that is where I think they face a lot of challenge. And that is when Google also started to visualize that when he was looking to expand further in markets like India, Brazil, and other sort of markets which are just upcoming, I think they were not getting the same kind of engagement and retention which, let's say, native English speakers were habituated to go to Google for everything, right? That is when Google coined this term NHP. They created a team which sarcastically was or amusingly was based out of Singapore, and their job was to sort of uncover insights on who these NHP users are. NHP stands for next half billion. So the idea was that all of us felt that these users would be very, very small and maybe why even take the pain of building for them, right? But Google was the first one to realize, and just to make sure that everyone understands how massive this market is, in a sentence, next half billion means it's a population of 500 million. That is much larger than the entire population of US, right? Just to make sure that everyone is able to realize the gravitas of the opportunity, they coined that term, they created a team, and their main job was to sort of reach out to people in Southeast Asia, South Asia, and then other South African nations and understand who these people are, what are their behaviors. It was just a tip of the iceberg, right? Out of 7 to 8 billion people that maybe inhabit planet Earth as of today, I think 1 or 2 billion back in 2014 to 2016 were actively using the internet. It was only 16% active people. And Eventually, obviously, maybe some tribes out there might not use internet ever, but I think most of us will use. That is how digitally the world is evolving. But eventually, this term became very, very important for all the big techs, and then a lot of other people also started to realize this. And from NHB, I think contextualization of that because of Geo was the Bharat users. Obviously, these are the tier 2 or tier 3 users who started adopting the internet after Geo. Even today, a lot of their behaviors are very different than, let's say, the early adopters of the internet, because a lot of products that we use today have been built for them. But everything else that is happening today at scale, how they interact, what are the kind of devices they have, what are the kind of behaviors they have, I think all of that is new. The Bharat users becomes very, very intriguing and challenging to build for.
Right, and I mean, there are a lot of reports that have recently come up, right? There has been the Bloom Venture report, which dissects the Indian population into three tiers. India 1, which is like Mexico, India 2, which is like Indonesia and falls in the aspirational class, and the India 3. Bharat users have been defined by multiple people in multiple ways. But if we had to, let's say, define them from economic background, right? How do I visualize where do they lie in this spectrum?
See, obviously, a large part of the population that resides in tier 2 or beyond in India comes with obviously slightly less GDP per capita, or let's say lower purchasing power available to them, right? A lot of these people, I'm not sure as of today because I have not visited, and I'm glad I heard that you are planning to visit all of these people and staying with them for next 2-3 months. I think the kind of money that they have, they are very, very choosy about the internet pack that they buy. They are very choosy about the access to the devices that they have. A major blocker is the language that they have been born and brought up with, right? The mother tongue for a large part of this population is generally non-English in nature. Given India is a land of diverse languages, I think it is. I think once we were only discussing and you pointed out, right? You had read that every 5 kilometers the dialect changes, and it's a recorded study as well. So I think all of these people,
the line there was कोस पे बदले पानी चार कोस पे वन.
all of these people as well, I think 80% of them, Dipanshu, come with lower access to resources. However, something that is exciting about them in my interactions whenever I've spent a lot of time in tier 3 and tier 4 India is that these people still have equal or even more aspirations and enthusiasm to become much better than where they are born and brought up in, right? A lot of them are very, very motivated to do well in their lives. So they want access to the internet because that really unlocks a lot of new world and possibilities for them. But the resources, the language understanding, everything is very, very less. So if I were to say, I think their per household would range around less than 30,000 per month. That is a very, very interesting fact. And 80% of them in a household of 4 to 6 will survive very well, actually, at that price point. Every decision that they make and the split of budget they have is for all the 4 to 6 people in that 30,000 at max per month that they operate with. So that's the actually income segment that they come from.
The ballpark would be that 60% of the India's bottommost income bracket is where they lie. In terms of the jobs that they do, right? Do they do only farming, or do they also work in tier 1 cities while they migrate, or how do they spend their professional life, formal economy? How do they contribute?
Great question. I think as of today, obviously, when we coined the term NHP in 2017, I think it has been roughly close to 8 years. And then building for Bharat as of today, if you look at, right, a lot of people have started to migrate from these tier 3, tier 4 geographies to particularly tier 1 geography or tier 2 also, right? So that migration has started to happen. But yet I would say that 70% of the people are still living in their native economies where they were born and brought up, and 30% have migrated. So now this becomes very interesting. One is the set of users who are still living there, but they're quite aspirational. They want to be on the internet. They want to consume a lot of content. They want to create content as well. I'm not sure if you have watched some of the reels out there. There are people in tier 4 who are actively creating content on not only reels but YouTube and YouTube shorts as well. 30% of them have already migrated to the tier 1 or tier 2 avenues where they have started to understand a bit of English. They have started to get immersed in how maybe large part of India residing in metro and let's say the sub-metro cities, and they are getting habituated to using products also in some form and shape.
It is very interesting to know that all these Swiggy boys or the delivery boys that come and serve us in Bangalore are mostly from Odisha, West Bengal, or the urban clap boys. I have interacted in the household, the basti that they live in. So these guys now have started ordering, let's say, gifts for their wives residing in the village. It's very interesting to know that how they are, adopting to the tech in while they have come in the cities, and then they go back and then teach to the other users. How are these Bharat users different from the early adopters or the tech savvy population that we call, which is basically us? Is the difference significant enough to build digital products differently for them?
While over a period of time, as societies immerse into themselves, right, I think the blurry line will even become more blurrier between tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 and tier 4. But if you ask me, as of today, I believe 60% of the population that has started using internet in the last 4 to 5 years. During COVID, all of us had a lot of time. We could not sort of navigate, and that same was a scenario with a lot of tier 3 and tier 4 people as well. I think they have started to realize the potential that this has, right, in terms of improving the quality of their life. They are still yet to adopt the digital behavior that we emulate, because a lot of us also have this perception that we are, in a way, we understand products better. I don't think that is that is how it is. It is because when we were exposed to early parts of the internet, which was built keeping users in the US or UK, the earlier user research, whatever happened in those geographies, and hence the products were built. I think we were forced to shape our behavior on how the products were defined, right? And eventually everything else that people in tier 1 and tier 2 started to use digitally was modeled on the same behavior, so as it does not get even further challenging for us. But these people did not have access to, let's say, Facebook, or let's say all of these websites in a career on the internet when they started to use. And in that particular instance, I think they felt it very, very challenging because they did not understand English prima facie. They did not know how to type very fluently in English. When we say literacy in India, right, literacy has two parts: reading literacy and writing literacy. So
Right.
reading literacy, I think a lot of people pick, but a lot of us obviously have been typing since school, college, etc. But a lot of people in tier 3, tier 4 do not actively type or write, right? Writing is not a behavior for them. They generally converse with each other. I think we would have typed hundreds of emails and hundreds of Slack messages, but for them, typing does not come natively. They are able to do a fair job in their life, but just by conversing with each other, right? So typing is not very, very innate habit for them. So if this is the door, right, that unlocks millions of possibilities for them, but the door is through typing, I think they're not very, very habitual about them. So typing is a big barrier, as is, let's say, English, which makes content consumption difficult. Even if, let's say, all your CTAs are in English primarily, they have not been habituated by some words like cart, etc. They have never been to a shopping mall. How would they understand a shopping cart? And third, I think one of the interesting insights that when we were working on the NHB community was, we realized that Facebook itself had hit a bottleneck in terms of growth back in 2013. And they realized, when they had shifted from a website first to a mobile first, and then they realized that there were a lot of challenges where beyond a point they were not able to grow on mobile, given by how they are acquiring AI engineers left, right, center. That is when they acquired the best mobile engineers globally, and they built a mobile application that could work, let's say, at even a 2G speed at Android 4. That was one of the earliest Androids or mobile interfaces, and was less than 1 MB in size, right? So if you look at the key specifications of that first Facebook Lite app that was released, today we talk about Lovable being the fastest software in history to hit 100 million revenue run rate, or more than 100 million users, right? Back in 2014, it was Facebook Lite that got 100 million users in just less than 1 month. And why? Because at that time also, a lot of early adopters had obviously started using, but a lot of people also wanted that social connection, who came from, let's say, similar behavior as the Bharat users today, and they had very old devices which did not have the right RAMs, very poor or slow kind of network, which was 2G. And then third, obviously, every bit of data that they transform or, let's say, use was very costly for them, right? For people in Bharat, everything that they do on the internet today comes at a conscious call that how much data that it is consuming. Internet has gotten very, very cheap, right? For example, we have 1 or 2 GB worth of data available every day, which is very cheap, but still we don't realize it because we have unlimited internet and Wi-Fi packs out there there we
Right.
spend a lot of time using mobile or Wi-Fi, right? But still, if you consume a movie in high definition, your 1 GB will be over very, very soon, right? These people have to take that conscious call that if they consume that, then rest of the day they will not have access to internet. For them, 300 rupees is also very costly. So all of these are very, very conscious calls.
One insight here is I have seen that these users have a innate behavior of switching off their mobile data. We leave it open throughout the day, but these users, even if now they are buying like bigger packs, they have this habit which they have retained. They pause it so that data ज़्यादा खर्च ना हो जाए. उनका concern है.
No, I think I also had this insight when a lot of the applications that we innately use background processing, right? Where even if the app is in the background, you would want to continuously understand what the user is doing on their device, or you would want to maybe have access to their location data, or a lot of background processing is needed to personalize user behavior. But one of the learnings that we had is that a lot of times our notification send rate was very, very low, right? At critical points. And eventually we realized that it was very low because people generally who were, let's say, prime users of one of the last product I was working on used to switch off the internet just to save it, right? So how will you send notification? How will you activate them in
Correct.
the hours that they don't want to? Because you cannot send notifications if the internet is off on their mobile devices. And all of a sudden, for example, we used to get this complaint. You'll understand now because I've given context, but they used to send that sometimes when we turn on your app, you send us 7 to 8 notifications at the same time, and hence we are uninstalling. But we were like that the notification team only sends maybe 2-3 notifications clubbed across different hours in a day, right? And then upon research we realized that it was because if they were opening the internet, all the queue was there of the notification on that user ID was getting triggered all of a sudden. So all of those things obviously we had to solve then, because these come when you actually work and then you realize difficult behavior. And obviously it's not by choice. They are very conscious of the money that they are spending on the internet, right? 300 for us, obviously all of us have gone through that as well, but 300 for us might be very easy decision right now to spend, but for them 3000 is their monthly budget for 4 to 6 people, where 300-400 per month also becomes a very, very critical choice.
Yeah, so the whole narration reminded me of how privileged we were back when we were adopting to the digital world, where we first encountered with laptops and the websites. Being fluent in English, we could navigate through the internet very smoothly. But for these users who came and encountered the digital world through mobiles, where they also struggled having like limited data access, limited device storage, the sheer background that they are coming from is very different. My mother is a government teacher, and now I could think of the student in fifth class who could not write even their names, who were not grade level competent. How would they use next set of apps? Very brilliantly articulated, Amar, like 4 points, language, typing versus voicing it out, and the complex concepts like cart, which they struggle with. Fourth one was basically the limitations that they have in terms of devices, which makes this user cohort very, very different from the early internet adopters. I just want to shift the gears a little bit and would love to discuss how is it changing today when we are sitting in 2025. Why is it important to discuss about Bharat users? What is the advantage or what is the opportunity out there for the startup builders?
Obviously, sometimes I look back and I believe that this is similar to what Google, Facebook did back in 2013 and 2014, right? When they had hit the plateau of US and UK paying users, they wanted to tap into the DAO farms of the world, right? Brazil, India, Indonesia, etc. So for us as of today, if I look at India, I think the elite India is already very, very habituated to few of the products, and they have very, very sticky nature for those products, right? But if you look at rest of the Bharat, I think 3 key points. One, they are still forming their habits on the internet. They are very amicable with you if you offer them the right discounts because of the reasons that we discussed, right? So there are a lot of problems for them that are still not solved, and in a way that meets their constraints and does not force them to tweak their behavior, but understands what is the real problem and solves them in the way. Second, for users in the world of AI, data becomes very important. A lot of these people obviously come with a lot of data. They are the new DAO farm for India, right? And these people have, as of today, their new behaviors, etc., can also shape whatever we want to learn about Indic languages. We want to learn about a lot of things about India. These people, if tapped, will be able to give you a holistic picture of when you're building for India. As of today, I think that is a very, very large gap. Third, I believe that the elite users have access to capital, but they have already habituated to some of the products and services. So if you're really building in a category which they have already sticky nature to, it's very difficult to break into that monopoly or duopoly which already exists. But
Right.
now for these people, there is a lot of opportunity. And India, because obviously the energy, the enthusiasm about building startups, I'm not sure if there is some official stat about it, but a lot of startup builders 5 years before came from Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, right? And they were solving problems that they were seeing. But eventually we are seeing a shift in startup builders coming from, let's say, Jaipur and Indore will still be tier 1 or might be tier 2. A lot of startup builders now coming from very, very core tier 3 and tier 4. Now, these people are someone who have faced those problems. For them, understanding the wider tier 3 and tier 4 ecosystems becomes very important, because then only they'll be able to go ahead and solve for them.
We have seen a lot of startups who came in Shark Tank, like Stage was one startup, and then there's another startup called Cuckoo FM, which is very popular, built by a person who belongs from a very small town in Rajasthan called Sikar. A lot of these stories are also inspiring the next set of founders. One thing, Amar, like just to put things in perspective, when you say the elite India, if we have 1.4 billion population, what will be the population size for elite India, and what's the opportunity lying there for tier 1 population?
When we were looking at credit, right, a lot of people who have credit cards in India as of today might be in some way representative of the elite India, right? Not exactly because they have a lot of money, but just because they have been tapped. I think credit user base on an active level, if I'm not wrong, is somewhere between 50 to 70 million on a recurring basis. That is what I remember reading somewhere. If I look at the elite India, largely it is sub 100 million who have the right kind of paying propensity, which you will look at or equate to roughly maybe the entire of the US, right? Which is, let's say, a heavily paying market. But rest of the 700 to 800 million people in India who use internet actively now, credits to Jio, are slowly starting to make more money. I think when you look at India becoming a fifth highest GDP or whatever it is, I think we are now one of the largest economies. Overall tier 1 size of the market is around 100 million odd people, right? I'm not sure if you follow consumption patterns for ACs that had the outburst quarters in the last few summers, because a lot of people now in tier 2 and tier 3 India can afford an air conditioner, and they are getting ambitious that they want an AC in their homes, right? Because they don't want to feel the same heat. Purchasing power is slowly and steadily increasing. Basically, what does this reflect? It reflects that 600 million people still are not habituated to regular products, and they are increasingly getting more capital to spend on the internet. So if you are able to design for these people in a way that really solves their problem without them having to tweak their behavior, but you tweaking your product to meet them where they are, I think you'll definitely be able to create sticky habits and then sort of monetize in future. I think some of the examples which you mentioned, other than that, I'm not sure if you have heard about ShareChat. ShareChat for a long while, just an engagement platform engaging next half billion users in vernacular languages. But then they tapped into this behavior that a lot of people in tier 3 and tier 4 actually live on the social relationships that they have. That is what gives them happiness, right? So gifting very, very basic things is also something that they really enjoy. So ShareChat tapped into that behavior where earlier they started with just gifting maybe a meme or a sticker, etc. And then they added paid gifts on their app, which was very, very cheap, right? So amalgamation of Jio and then UPI, those minute transactions are sort of fueling the turnaround of ShareChat from being a loss-making entity to now being a profitable one.
Apart from ShareChat, platforms like Cuckoo FM and Dream11 have become very, very popular in this tier 2 plus segment, especially due to the reason you mentioned, changing consumption trends. The notion that these markets are not monetizable, even if they are coming from the lower income bracket, the notion that they can't pay is changing a lot in the recent 3-4 years.
There's new trend that is coming, which is called of micro dramas, where micro monetization, right, is becoming a very, very unique habit which does not exist anywhere in the world. People do not want to subscribe for, let's say, a $2.99 or a $3.99 monthly subscription, but if they really like piece of content, they're willing to pay 1 rupee per episode that they watch, right? What I know is that even Hotstar might be thinking about it in some form and shape, which has built the product in a very, very NHB fashion, but earlier was modeled on the behavior of US and UK. So just wanted to share that micro monetization is a new behavior that we have realized that people there, whenever they're making a purchase, which is let's say $2.99 or $3.99, which is for future usage, they're not very comfortable. But if it is for something that they want to use or read or learn or maybe watch immediately, they're happy to do that maybe multiple times, right? That is the kind of sachet kind of a behavior which existed in shampoos and biscuits, which have now been emulated in a digital fashion, and it's actually leading to a lot of revenue for some of the startups out there. The amount of capital that they have right now might be small, but the scale is so high that as their consumption increases from a monetary standpoint, it will become multiple 100 million kind of businesses.
That truly covers all the point why we should discuss them today. Large unserved market, having propensity to pay in small tickets, and the changing consumption patterns, which gives a room for new services and products to be created and innovated for this market. Few of the people from the audience might take up the founder hat and give a chance on building for this user segment. I remember that during your time at Doubtnut, you had gone to a rural immersion trip with your team to figure out what's happening. Would love to know what led you to do that, because that's very rare, and what were the learnings you got from that expedition? How did it influence your product building after that?
I worked at Doubtnut, which obviously was an edtech app for vernacular users in K-12 domain in India. I think briefly we were one of the most used edtech apps globally for a brief while as well. Pre-AI world, we were using AI and LLMs in some form and shape. LLMs were not mainstream then, but we were using some form of early machine learning to deliver to students basically video solutions for problems in vernacular languages to democratize access to quality education, right? I think we see that a lot of people have not come to the internet, but if you really have a problem that they face every day, I think they're willing to jump that ship very, very soon. When we launched this, I think first month we had only 100 users, but in 1 year, I think we reached 1 million daily active users, which quickly climbed to 4 million in just a couple of years, right? Because children there were really, really worried about getting access to 24/7 help when they were stuck with a doubt, and only way was maybe a government school teacher or a tuition teacher, which were available maybe far from their home, or they don't have access to a regular kind of access, right? So that is when we were building this, and we realized that there were so many different challenges that sitting in a Gurgaon air-conditioned office, maybe we were not even able to envision how these people use our product. And hence it was very, very necessary for us to go back multiple times to these people where they were living, understand from them how they use the product and what are some things that we are able to do well, because metrics only tell you, I would say, even half the story is not very clear. So we had to make this happen. I think we had built basically a tool that could allow you to crop images. So basically our tool was, you take a photo of any question and then we will give you a video on that in less than 10 seconds, right? Explaining the solution and how you should go about solving that question. But what we realized is that a very key step was that, given obviously we were also getting started, AI was not that prevalent, the image, right, the OCR extraction, we used to take help from the student that if you're taking a photo which has, let's say, 5 questions, how do you crop that one question, right? And we used to always believe that we have built a very good cropper. We have done a good job because on our devices, which had a large screen, we could easily pick each of the elements and then crop. But what used to happen is that we used to see a lot of images were poorly cropped. And what used to do is that, for example, if you have one question, right, which you intend to ask, but in your image, if you have cropped one question plus half of other question, you'll get a gibberish answer, right? Because then the question gets missed and the tech will never be able to understand what you are trying to ask. And we felt maybe we have done a very, very good job, because everything that we tried to crop, we were easily able to do that. But when we saw this data that a lot of questions were getting gibberish answers and people were saying that the app is a scam, we were really confused. This was the first trip that we did, was 60 kilometers further away from Banaras in a government school where a lot of our users obviously came from Hindi language. And then we realized that a lot of these children, even if they were from 9 to 13th class group, 13th means that they have taken a drop year to even further prep for their colleges, they did not have access to their own smartphones. They were borrowing the access to smartphones to learn online, and that behavior was limited for 1 hour, maybe once every day, once couple of days, and the device that they were borrowing were generally very, very low quality and most of the times had a broken screen. So these people, just because they were very intentful of learning, were getting these devices, using, maybe recharging for maybe a daily pack, and then they were consuming. But when the screen was broken, right, they were not able to effectively crop the question on the screen because it needs your touch behavior to be very, very perfect, and hence they were getting gibberish answers, and they had to spend a lot of time to really crop the question, right, so that they get the right answer. So this was something that we had never envisioned. So when we test, right, we do our UATs, maybe we have 100 devices, but we'll never envision how easy or difficult it is to perform a behavior on a cracked screen. Or maybe sometimes what was happening is these people were using a Redmi 4A, which is, let's say, available for 3,000 or 4,000. And this was very exciting, right? We thought that we know that which device our users are using, and we got a new one from the market and we were able to use the app perfectly. But when we went to this user research insight, we realized that some of these devices were actually bought secondhand, and after a lot of after 2 or 3 years of usage, their RAM that was accessible, the quality of performance was very, very poor, to be honest. And these people hence were not even able to upload the images, because image upload behavior as of today, I think it's a second nature for us to share images, etc. But back to when we were building the product, right, in early Geo days, uploading an image on a poor quality device with, let's say, shaky internet, I think that was very, very difficult to do, right? Whenever we ran the test on, let's say, devices we had on 3G networks, we were still able to do upload images. But when we went and we realized that maybe the quality of the internet, even though it shows a 3G signal, or in data you would see a 2.5 or a 3G, it's not exactly the same speed, right? So a lot of these insights will come in on how these people actually use your product when you will eventually sort of immerse yourself. And that is what our learnings were. Few of them I could share right now, otherwise it will get very long. But yeah, I feel that it's always exciting to spend time with these users because you have never felt the challenges that they operate within.
That was very counterintuitive, that the broken screen leading to image not getting cropped properly. The students might be getting the old devices because of which this might be happening.
One strange behavior that we realized is that because we used to feel that maybe we don't do a good job as an app, right? Because to be honest, every new user that used to come in, we used to see 30% uninstalls happening the same day. And as a product manager, answering that to your founder will always be very, very difficult, that why are a lot of your users who are coming in uninstalling the same day, right? However, I was never able to frantically looking at data because people were getting a good experience till they were uninstalling. Good experience means they were able to find answers of the questions that they were cropping on the app. They were not asking one question, maybe 30 questions at a stretch, right? And still uninstalling. So when we went to these users, I think something exciting that we realized is that because of the borrow behavior of the devices, actually, whenever they were borrowing a device, they used to install the app. Sometimes the SIM that they have was of the person that they were borrowing this device from. They will recharge that. They will give them in cash, but recharge the number. They will download our app. They had a pending backlog of 30 to 50 questions. They will ask that. And before handing the device back, they will carefully uninstall the app. Obviously, these kids were not only borrowing the device for learning. Obviously, we had this delusion when we were living, but they were also using it for some of the fun activities, maybe using TikTok, which was very popular back then in India as well. Hence, just to be mindful of giving back the devices to even their own parents or someone else, they uninstalled all the apps that they had downloaded, because just in the fear of not getting caught, right? So now this was something that we felt that maybe we are not doing a good job, but this was very exciting behavior that we realized. On the other end, what used to happen is that it always meant that somehow we have to build that top of the mind recall for users, right? You can only build that when you keep sending them notification that, hey, I'm there in your phone, you can use me wherever. But if the people uninstall, how do you do that? So that is when we realized that for us to be able to do that, I think in some form and shape, we have to retarget the uninstalled users very, very actively. And the uninstalled users communication might have to be indexed on the parents, or let's say someone else who is using, right? Sometimes our comms were, hey, we know that your kid Dipanshu is using, let's say, Doubtnut for learning. Don't let them stop their learning behavior. Get them to install now. So all of that was a result of the learnings that we had on the trip. Earlier, we were sending it by the name of directly at, let's say, Dipanshu, you have done this, but it was ineffective because people were not able to relate. Changing that, just the nature of the comms and building a lot of retargeting to build top of the mind recalls through SMS of uninstalled users. I think that a lot of people don't do actively. We do, but it is very infrequent, right? Those were few additional insights that we realized while working on it.
I mean, the product team at Doubtnut तो ऐसा सर पकड़ लेते होंगे अपने कि अरे यार क्या करे तो करे क्या. There are a lot of challenging problem statements and you guys had solved it very uniquely, very innovatively. I would just like to thank you for sharing all these insights and how you built the edtech products for the learners coming from smaller cities. So I would just like to end this conversation by asking you 2-3 questions which you may answer candidly. So I see that in your LinkedIn background picture, you have a picture with Mr. Nitin Gadkari. I remember you mentioning that in your second year, you started working with him on road safety. How did you land up there working with the Union Minister of the State?
I think it has been a long and tedious journey to solve one of the challenges that grapples India, I think, is road crashes. I'm not sure if you know and the audience knows that India, unfortunately, is a leader in this space. We lose more than 1.75 lakh people every year to road crashes. I was always an introvert in college first year and got ragged, and then eventually built the right kind of friendships with those people itself who were seniors, and they were the brightest minds in college. Worked with them across the first year. They were only friends that I had and learned a lot from them across product management, across building ventures. And I think they gave me a lot of work, but at the outset, I learned a lot from it. But eventually, at the end of this year, basically, some of them were moving to US, some of them had got placed, and hence they decided to celebrate with one final trip outside college. Fortunately or unfortunately, they had never actually went out of campus to celebrate everything together as a group. So this was their first instance. But unfortunately, what happened is that while returning, I think the tire of their car burst and 3 of them died on spot and 3 were paralyzed for 6 months. So at that time, I think it was the first time in my life that I had opened up to people as a friend or mentor, and eventually losing most of them at the same time, I think was very, very difficult. Not only me, a lot of people at IIT Delhi, where I did my undergrad from, looked up to them. Obviously, it was a difficult moment, but after some time, we realized that maybe if we also do not do something about it, I think this will only continue to happen. And that is when I think I met one of the professors at IIT Delhi who had been leading road safety efforts for WHO UN for last 30 years. Unfortunately, I think all of us get so busy in college fest, learning, making our careers, that nobody at IIT Delhi in the bachelor space knew that she existed on campus or what road safety was. Only after this incident, all of us searched, and then we realized that the problem is very, very huge. A lot of people are actually losing their friends and family members to road crashes every year. So that is when I reached out to her in the youthful energy that I want to change the face of road safety in India. And I said that I want to do a lot of things. And obviously, she had worked for 30 years. She knew that it would be very difficult, but then she decided to join hands with me and help me. So that is where the journey started on working on road safety to save people. I think one interesting fact that I realized is that more than 60% people who die are young people, where it becomes a very critical issue, because not only you are losing 3% of the GDP in India, but these young people are sole breadwinners for their families, right? So it sends a lot of people in difficult times. So that is when the journey started with an attempt to solve. I think we were able to quickly make some strides. Obviously, it was very challenging. We started with awareness at IIT Delhi and then looped in colleges across. But eventually we realized that maybe awareness would obviously solve some bit of the problem, would not create a large amount of impact immediately. So that is when we started an initiative where all of us have spent, let's say, formative 18 to 20 years in a local city, right? And after that, we move out for colleges and building our career. So we know that state, city, and the challenges on the infrastructure very, very in depth. So what I did is that we launched a program where we enrolled and partnered with around 2,000 colleges in India, where we said that maybe the first and second year students who go back to their hometown, if they can pick up a local road issue where some deaths or some crashes are happening, we will pair them with an experts like masters and PhD students who were working with the professor Geetam Tiwari, who was the guiding force for me, and we will help them solve that local issue. So I think interestingly, it was just the second year of me in college, but this really excited, I think, a lot of people, because they felt that this was a real problem and they will learn while working on it. And eventually, I think at 70 or different locations in India, from an one-way regulation to a underbridge getting approved by the local government of, let's say, 60 CR, all of this this happened in just a year, and which had potential to save thousands of lives just because of the approvals that had come in terms of solving core issues which was causing crashes. I think that is when Times Now and a lot of channels did actually a lot of case study on how these people had worked, and then obviously they wanted to cover us as well. So once they did this coverage, I think the news reached Mr. Gadkari. Respect to him as well, where he has always been very pro that while he'll build the best state of the art infrastructure in India, maybe it will take us few years, but we'll be there. He also is cognizant that it has to be built in a way that everyone's transports on the road very, very safely as a user, right? So then he reached out, and that is how I met him. I think whatever we were doing very, very passionate.
So it was not you reaching out to him and Mr. Nitin Gadkari reaching out to you guys.
It was mutual. So we always thought big from day zero. You have that youthful energy in college where you don't know how difficult it can be. So we obviously were striking outside his office, and he was regularly seeing us. And obviously I took help from some of my peers in the team and some volunteers. And he noticed that something was going on. But when he saw that we had done some impactful work and media coverage, I think it solidified. So we always wanted to meet him, but he giving that willingness to also meet us and sort of reaching out through the right channels, I think gave us an opportunity to present what we felt and what we want to do. And since then, I think it has been roughly 11 years since that meeting, and on and off I've tried to contribute to road safety through Indian Road Safety Council, which is led by Dipanshu, who is a very close friend and now a co-founder. He was someone who joined us because his father had met with a crash and they were bedridden for 6 months, and their family went through a very difficult phase. So Dipanshu, also obviously same name as yours, but has been a close friend for 11 years.
Some other volunteer.
So he has been steering the ship for the last 11 years, and I think we have continued to work with Mr. Gadkari, and one thing led to the other, and we have identified a lot of avenues. So that is how all of it started. But I think the problem is still not solved. It will take many more people, much larger investment, much larger effort to really reduce crashes in India. But yeah, that is how I met Mr. Gadkari. I think he has always motivated us to keep doing more, and I think his narrative is always that don't think about doing things that don't scale or cannot be repeatable. Think about sustainability first, that how do you sustain the initiative and then scale that through product and tech. That has been my engagement.
I think it's truly inspiring how one incident in your life motivated you to build such a large organization. I think it's one of the largest in road safety, and giving a decade of yours dedicated to it. Truly inspiring, Amar. The other thing that I would want to ask you is, if you had all the money in the world, what would be that you would be doing?
I think Dipanshu, money, as I mentioned, is more of an enabler. It gives you freedom to maybe take out time to do things that really matter to you. When you don't have a lot of things, I think you want to reach that stable state in your life. But after that, once you have a comfortable life, I think what you really want to do is to leave a legacy by solving important and critical problems for the mass, right? Because that is when you would feel that you are being challenged, you are actually contributing to something that has not been solved. For example, I've always felt that education is a sector where I've been active since long, but have we solved improving the access to education for millions? Not yet there. Road safety, I've been active since a decade. Have we solved that? Not yet. I think these are just two problems, right? So if I have all the money in the world, after obviously ensuring that there's a basic satisfaction and comfort in life, I think I would want to solve these critical problems, excite a lot of other people as well. Because one of the things that I've realized is that the quality of talent that is available for, let's say, non-profit space in India, which is actually solving, is very, very poor, to be honest. While everyone puts in a lot of effort, I think the compensation and everything else limits to a way the right kind of people coming into these space. So maybe I would want to encourage other people to not worry about money if I can take care of it, so that they can actually solve these critical problems. And obviously I love to collaborate with them and work hands-on. Once I believe that we are done making enough so that at least sustenance is not a question, I think solving those important problems for the mankind and then leaving a legacy that other people can learn from and sort of continue with, I think that is where I think I would want to invest a lot of time after that. I think first I will want to reach the state that you mentioned.
No, that's true. But yeah, really nice thought. I know an IT Delhi alum, Kumar Shubham, who is building a non-profit around this thesis, that how do the most talented people solve the grand challenges of India. Truly, we need a lot of talented people to come in the non-profit sector. One last question that I would want to ask you and wrap up this episode is, what is your take on the 70 hours work week? What would be your advice for aspiring young professionals who just started their jobs?
I don't have a very active take on 70-hour work week. Everyone should do what inspires them and motivates them and excites them. If it is 40 hours, hours, be it if it is 110 hours, be it, right? I think everyone is very, very different. I have seen people who have worked 10 hours per week, but they have created the kind of impact that maybe all of us included may not be able to create in 1,000 hours, right? So I think just because of the passion and the excitement that they brought onto the table, some people can contribute in less time, some people need more time. So I think that is an individual choice, to be honest. That is how I look at it. But I think something that is very, very important is that whatever you are doing should come from within, that you really want to do it because you want to create impact and learn. That is what is very, very important and critical, because if you get excited by what you are doing and contributing, I think beyond a point it becomes habit and you will stop calculating all the hours. That is what should really inspire you to wake up from your bed and contribute and maybe grind every day. I've also tried to pick up things which I was not intrinsically motivated, but beyond the point I realized that in that case even 1 hour can become a grind. But if you are really excited about something, maybe 110 hours per week is also not a grind, right? I think that being said, being excited by what you are doing and being healthy and taking care of your well-being is also very, very important.
Fair point that it is always an individual's call. Thank you so much, Amar, for taking out time today. I think the last question also finds its origin because it was a hectic or enjoyable weekend for you because you were working as well. But thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule and sharing your takes on the Bharat users and defining the user persona for us. I am sure that the audience will get to learn a lot from your journey, as well as they'll have a better clarity on who are the users we are talking about.
Again, thanks for inviting me. And I believe there is a lot of gap in the knowledge that is available about building for Bharat. I think kudos on the initiative that you have started. If you are able to get all of those insights collated at a place and create playbooks so that people can really build good things and solve critical problems for the existing users as well as users who will come up on the internet in the next few years, I think it will be a great place and a repository for everyone. Happy to support wherever I can.
Looking forward to create much more impact. Thank you so much, Amar. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Dipanshu.